Welcome to the Rugged Human Podcast.
Sweeping of their zombie cells. For like some of the women out there, it might be autophagy, but it doesn't happen. Your body actually gets into a self-cleanup.
What is ketosis?
That when you make that shift from burning carbs, start with protein. Make sure we're getting enough because often we're not.
Welcome to episode 9 of the Rugged Human Podcast. My guest today is Lisa Effren, fitness expert and diet expert. And we're going to be talking about diet, weight loss, ketosis, nutritious and delicious recipes, sleep optimization, food tracking, and women's health and empowerment. So stay tuned.
Well, thank you for joining me. So
Yeah.
I wanted to bring Lisa on. Lisa is on Instagram and at Health Chick, right?
That's right. Without the vowels, without the E and the A.
And I've known Lisa for a long time, and one of the things that we have in common is a lot of the health stuff, diet, exercise and stuff. And Lisa is a trainer, a guru as far as food and recipes and stuff like that too. So I wanted to bring you on and kind of talk about the idea of the challenge that just to kind of get going for the new year.
Yeah.
And re-engage with, some of the things we might have dropped the ball on through the year and try to get a little motivation to keep moving forward. But one of the things I definitely want to do is tap into Lisa's knowledge, particularly about food and health. So
it's funny, Jared, is that the business with food is like, I'm a lousy cook. I'm just going to put that out there. So it's almost funny that I even share recipes because I'm like the 5-minute girl, 5-minute prep. It's going to be lean, mean, and it'll taste okay. And I'll be the dishwasher. You want to cook for 2 hours, slice and dice, but 45 minutes, that was gym time. So that was, single mom for many years. And that was kind of like the break. I can cook lean and quick. And so that's kind of, a lot of the recipes that are out there, they are healthy. And they usually don't require a whole lot of prep, but I am so not the chef.
Well, I think a lot of people can probably identify with that, especially the busy mom side of things and, the busy workplace side of things and all that kind of thing.
Sure.
So one of the things since we're talking about food, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you approach diet and because ultimately what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make it, give some people some ideas of things that they can do to eat healthier and to make it easier to do that.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. Well, so for me personally, I do intermittent fasting some. I know that's like been a fun thing. I personally, I'm not very hungry in the morning, to be honest. So when I'm on vacation, I know that we're going to hit some trails maybe for several hours. I'll have some breakfast then, but I'm just not that hungry in the morning. Now, having said that, the older you get, you really have to be intentional with lifting weights and especially for women and making sure that we're getting enough protein. Yeah. And I personally find that it can be difficult if I'm doing intermittent fasting to get my protein in the day. So sometimes I may go till 10 or 12, but a lot of times I'll try to go ahead and throw in a protein shake mid-morning myself personally. And then as far as a balance, the breakdown of carbs, protein, and everything else, it really would depend on what an individual's personal goals are and what they're trying to achieve, where they are in life, and then, whether or not they might have some restrictions and how food makes you feel.
What is intermittent fasting, Lisa? I think let's just get back to the real basics. What does that actually mean?
I did hear a joke the other day. I won't be able to remember it now. It was pretty funny about intermittent fasting. But it's called different things, but it's shortening your eating window or allowing some time so that your body has a break from digestion. And, years ago there, was kind of a thought that, we don't have 3 main meals. We have mini meals and we eat 7 times a day. And I went through that for that, eating and we don't need this influx of food constantly. Now, again, going back to an individual, Someone who's diabetic may need to be monitoring their glucose a little bit more carefully. But for the most part, we really, if we're fueling properly and eating properly, we aren't going to be hungry in between meals. And one way to do that is with your protein and also with your quality fats. One of the easiest things to do is that, well, I won't say easy, because if we're eating out and that's frequently or convenient, is that if you just think about your plate, there's a dinner size plate and then there's a smaller plate, more like a salad plate. And really, that's probably a better one to think of if we're cutting it in fourths, and to have, 1/4 to a half that's protein, and then your other half that's veggies. You could have a fourth that's protein, a fourth that's a starch, and the other half veggies. But it really depends on what it is that you're trying to achieve. But back to the question on intermittent fasting, that's going a period of time where you're giving your body a break. So typically breakfast is our break the fast. But if you go a little bit longer, your body actually gets into a self cleanup. So there's different things that happen at different stages. So once you get past 12 hours, you can start 12 to 16 hours, you start getting into some fat burning. Once you go past 16 to 20, up to 24, you actually get into autophagy, which is like the sweeping of your zombie cells, and that can be really beneficial. Again, if you're not diabetic. So I don't do.
Word again?
What's that?
What was the word? Autophagy.
Autophagy. That's your body's natural way to clean up. It really is. It does some magical things, but it doesn't happen if your body's constantly working to digest food.
Okay. Now, can you get into that kind of same state by doing like a cleanse, like a juice cleanse or anything like that?
Well, a juice cleanse is going to give your body a break and digestion, because you're not doing that solid.
Yeah.
But if you're having a juice cleanse, you've got sugar in there. So if you're in a state of taking in sugar, you're not getting to a state of ketosis. So if you're in ketosis, then you can get to some cleanup. There are a lot of things that benefit with like types of fast and some juicing and things like that. And then their juicing, again, that really depends on, is it a celery juice type of thing, or is it you have fruit juices? Your fruit juices are going to throw some more sugar. Again, gives your body a break, but because of that sugar, you're not into the ketosis part. So it just really depends on what the objective is of what you're trying to do and why.
Right. So let's say that someone's goal is weight loss, just because that's the most common thing that's happening right now. I know I'm in that mode right now because I gained like 9 pounds, and I've been a lot more sedentary. I've been sitting here in my office, not going to the gym, not going for those hikes like I like to do, especially in beautiful North Carolina where I am right now. You mentioned ketosis, you mentioned intermittent fasting, and in my life, those are the two things that help me pretty much relatively maintain my weight. And I lost 60 pounds doing pretty consistent keto diet. And I didn't really know about intermittent fasting back then. I started learning about it as I continued through, but I lost a lot of that weight with ketosis. So what is ketosis for people who might not know, and how does that actually work in our bodies? Before, I think, just to get back to the very basics of it before we move on to some of the techniques that we can do.
Well, your body, and this is one of the things that can make it difficult with convenient foods. So the more processed a food is, the quicker it breaks down in your body. And so, a lot of people are familiar with, okay, I need to stay away from sugar, cakes, cookies, that kind of thing. But really, the more processed something is, the quicker it breaks down in your body. And it's just like sugar. It's a sugar infusion. And then your pancreas has to, release some insulin. The insulin's try to pull the glucose and balance it out in your body and just work real hard. But what ketosis does is that you shift your body into a position where your body is burning fat as a fuel source. And if you're used to eating, a hamburger, then, if you can do the burger without the bun, but if you're used to eating a hamburger and some other more processed foods, it may take a couple of days to get into ketosis. And you may feel a little, they call it like the keto flu. And then your body then you feel like you're on fire and you're generating energy and your body's getting energy and it learns how to burn fat as fuel. So I personally don't stay in a state of ketosis myself. I do like carbs. I'm not an anti-carb person. I'm an anti-processed carb person.
Yeah.
And where I do is I sort of fluctuate between. So their goal is to be metabolically fluid, so you can, or flexible, so you can go from a state of ketosis. If you're fasting a day or a morning till 12 or 2, and then you can eat whatever your balance is that you're trying to eat, and then you can slide back into it. So I kind of stage how I eat, but I'm not as intentional unless there's a reason that I'm trying to, if I'm trying to get to a certain body fat or a certain muscle level, then I'm going to be really watching my macros carefully. But I kind of slide in and out of it. But I think ketosis is a great thing if someone has been, they're trying to get a little bit off sugar and processed foods. They can get through that couple of days, so their body's generating, burning ketones. Because what happens is that's what your body is, it starts releasing ketones, and then your body can use that as a fuel source. So you do have that couple of days in there that it can be, you probably experience that when you make that shift from burning carbs. But the challenging thing is that if we continue to give ourselves and I mean like processed foods, like having a cracker or some chips or some bread with our burger, our bodies want to burn. It's easier, quicker to burn that glucose, sugar, because it throws the sugar into the bloodstream really quick. It's always going to go for that. So say if you could cut your calories really low and, drink a Coke and think, gosh, I only had 500 calories today, I should be losing all this weight, and you'll be starving. Or, just because your blood sugar's off. Whereas at the same time, if you eat, the one thing about a solid meat is that, or a chicken or egg or something like that, is that protein is such a metabolically active. When you eat it, your body requires 30% of the calories just to digest it, and it's really satisfying. A quality fat is really satisfying. So if you have some quality fats and some solid proteins, throw in some vegetables, which don't really have very many calories, you can enjoy your cheese. It really is a satisfying way to eat, and your body can continue to burn that fat and be efficient with it. But as long as if you're throwing some carbs in there, your body will want to burn the carbs and it won't touch the fat, unfortunately.
Yeah. So you mentioned the word macros. For those people who don't know what that means, can you describe what a macro is?
Sure. Yeah. So, you have your fat, your protein, your carbohydrates. So, and I know for like some of the women out there, it might be, counting calories can, maybe it might be a little bit triggering. So I really like to say, like, let's start with protein. Let's get familiar with how much protein is in what we're eating and make sure we're getting enough, because often we're not.
Yeah.
And the other thing moving against that is that the older you get. So if you're at 30, every year past 30, you're starting to lose muscle if you're not doing resistance work and if you're not taking in your protein, because our bodies are amazing. And so guess what they're going to do? They're going to pull calcium if we need it from our bones. They're going to pull amino acids from our muscles if we're not eating that. So you want to lift weights or do some kind of resistance training, and then you want to provide your body with those amino acids via protein or whatnot, so that it can rebuild.
So the macros then are the carbohydrates,
protein, carbs, and fat.
Right. So we got three big basic things we track.
3 basic things. And your fat, those are 9 calories a piece for each gram of fat. Your protein is 4 calories, and your carbohydrates are 4 calories. But when people say a calorie is not a calorie, it's not, because, for example, when I was talking about the thermogenic effect of protein, so just for ease, say we had 1,500 calories, we were eating all protein. But if 30% of that, our body is going to burn 30% of that just from digesting it, because it requires that it's harder to digest. So then your net effect is 1,000 calories. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you have a carbohydrate, significantly less, like a couple percentage, and you're probably still going to be starved because it breaks down quicker.
So that's exactly where that comes from.
Yeah.
A calorie is not a calorie because of what you just said.
Right. So it makes the difference. You can actually eat a little bit more. You will be more satisfied. And your net calorie intake will be less if you're eating some solid proteins.
Food tracking. Number one, it helps me learn what's in the food that I'm eating. What I use is MyFitnessPal. And I'm sure a lot of people can use different trackers, but do you use a food tracker, or you just, at this point through experience what everything is that you're putting in your mouth, right?
I do mostly know through experience. However, if I'm at a place where I'm not seeing results, or like say if I had to do a shoot of some kind, and I'm going to be in a bathing suit soon, or I might need to get a little bit more, careful and look at what I'm doing. But if I'm achieving what I'm achieving, I don't. But I do have like my daily planner. I've got my appointments on here. I'm just looking at my to-do list, and I'd have meals tracking. And what I'm basically doing there, for me, I want to make sure I'm getting my protein. So that's the thing that I'm writing down on there. My protein, the estimate, so if I had this protein shake, this many grams, if I had this many grams. So at the end of the day, I'm looking at my protein intake.
So you're specifically focusing more on the protein.
Right.
Let's see. So we covered macros, we covered intermittent fasting, we kind of covered ketosis, we've kind of covered, what our bodies generally do. I try to make eating healthy as simple as I can. Making a home cooked meal versus wanting to go out and grab takeout or something. Do you have any tips, tricks, or any methods that you use to keep things simple in the kitchen so that you can eat more healthy?
Well, if it's a long involved recipe, I'm not doing it. That's one. I do keep some cut up veggies. And I am not, when I'm talking about carbs, I'm not anti-fruit. I always have some apples on hand. I always have frozen berries. I also keep some frozen vegetables, even though I like fresh vegetables and try to eat in season or whatnot. I do find that sometimes I don't have everything I need for a recipe. So I do have some things that I keep in the freezer also that makes it easy. But really it's having the right things on hand. And like I said, it goes back to, sometimes you're opening that fridge and you're looking inside. And so if I've got my cut up veggies and some a little mixed up ranch that I make, then, I can eat a little bit of that and I'm fine. I just have to kind of remind myself. And also, as the busier you are too. Now, hydration is really important. And so one of the things when we're talking about health or food or diet, really going back to some of the foundations is sleep and hydration. So when people first talking about working out or losing weight, I'm like, oh, let's pull back a little bit. How are you sleeping? How many hours a night are you sleeping? What's the quality of your sleep? And then talk about hydration, because sometimes what we think is hunger is actually that we're dehydrated. And then are we getting enough water, getting some electrolytes and whatnot?
You track your sleep?
I do. And interestingly, I found that whenever I fly, I don't normally feel tired during the day, but I'm really surprised. And also if I drink, so I do love a nice tequila. And over COVID, we attended a bourbon tasting, and that was really nice. And so I like a neat bourbon too. But if I have 2 ounces, I can feel fine. But my sleep, my REM and my deep sleep it tanks. Travel, it tanks. And then, the other thing is if I'm snacking at night. Yeah. So if I were to eat late and then go to bed, my body's working too hard trying to digest it. My sleep's awful. Now my length of sleep is okay, but you wake up and I'm looking, I'm like, well, I knew that.
What do you use to track your sleep?
I have a Garmin.
I used Fitbit for many years. I'm going to finally move to an Apple Watch.
There you go.
If you have an activity tracker, all the new ones pretty much, whether it's Garmin, Fitbit, or Apple, or I would imagine any of the other ones out there, they do track your sleep, and they'll tell you when you are in REM sleep, and they'll tell you when you get up, when you've been restless, and it will tell you the quality of your sleep. Yeah. So, I personally, I highly recommend having some type of an activity tracker, because it just when you start looking at the details that we're talking about here, we're talking about some pretty detailed things when it comes to our health and things like that. It's a lot easier to start seeing patterns.
Sure. And the other part of that too is just looking at your steps.
Yeah.
So, it's funny that you can jump a 5,000 increment. People don't think, oh, 10,000 steps, that's a whole lot. Well, if you're moving throughout the day, it's funny how quickly. It's really pretty easy to get through that and just moving around. But if you're sitting, boy, it's nice to be able to look at that. So I'm like, I need to go take the dog out for a walk. I need, go do this and just move a little bit more. There's some stats. I'm not going to remember this off the top of my head, but at 4,000, there's different cutoffs. And then for every 1,000 steps over that, there's another 15% impact, positive impact on mortality risk and things like that. So it really is beneficial. Our bodies really weren't meant to sit, and sitting, they talk about sitting being the new smoking. It truly is. Everything's become so convenient.
Yeah. There's a new documentary on Netflix about the blue zones.
The blue zones, where you have folks that live 100 years, past 100 years, and they're not just living to that period of time, but they're living vibrantly, energetically, fully, meaning they're not being they're not in a bed being fed by a tube. They're, herding sheep and walking up mountains, and they're, in the back actively, they're growing their food, they're harvesting their food, they're preparing their food, they're cooking, it's just amazing. One of the things I was seeing, in the areas where it's one of the Asian areas, and they feel like their incidence of falls and things like that is they do a lot of that, what we call, like in yoga, a womb squat, where you're squatting all the way down, where your butt's almost touching the ground, and they are in that position a lot as they work, as they do things. And so all day long, they're up and down and up and down and up and down, and have mobility, don't have the mobility issues that we tend to see over here.
That adds up too.
Yeah.
Eating closer to the source is better for us. And they interviewed a tribe, an Aboriginal tribe in Australia. And they talked to a bunch of the elders. They had the elders, and they said, hey, what are most of the people dying of now in your group? And they said, well, we got, the heart attacks, we got a lot of diabetes, and so they were asked, well, what changed? And they said, well, what changed was white flour. And they make these little pancakes. White flour and Coca-Cola were the two big things. So essentially it was just processed food coming into their little group where they never had it before. The last question, this is what the great part of the story was, the interviewer was asking, well, what did people used to die of before all this stuff came in? And they looked at the interviewer like he was completely crazy, and they said, old age. So it's really true when we can get that. And a lot of the blue zones, like I think Okinawa, and there's some place in Mexico or wherever they are. But the three things that I remember seeing that they all had in common was there was a lot of walking involved, and there was typically incline walking. Like they had to go up a little hill,
you're right,
or up a little mountain would be one. And two would be that they made their own meals. And three, most of the time they were eating really straight from the source, pretty much not processed.
And community.
Well, that's the whole other aspect of it, the love, acceptance, the mental, emotional, human side of everything is that has a huge factor, loneliness and all that stuff impacts our health more than we probably even know. So that's fantastic. So, but I do want to kind of get to that because I want to hear your perspective on it, but I want to try to keep it in order here. Let's talk quick recipes really quick because I love talking recipes. And for those of you who don't know, Lisa is able to make like gourmet tasting desserts out of like good healthy stuff. Can you give me a couple of just maybe like 2 or 3 entrees that you typically make? And then how do you satisfy that sweet tooth? Because I got a huge one and I go through leaps and bounds to try to satisfy my sweet tooth without having anything sugar.
So there's a couple different things. Almost every recipe. So really I would start with, what's your favorite recipe? What is it that you really love? And we can probably find a workaround for you. And from there, it really depends on, then do you have certain food types that you're staying away from? Like someone may be doing keto, so we probably don't want to put a banana in their recipe. A lot of folks with thyroid issues or Hashimoto's really want us to, probably all of us could benefit from stay away from gluten, but then you have gluten and wheat items that you're staying away from. And then to that point, there peanuts sometimes cause allergies, or the other one is dairy. And so it really depends on the person. But if there's a favorite food you have, let me know, because I bet you we've got a workaround for
Pasta.
it.
Pasta.
Yeah. So, okay. So there's a lot of different, if you can do beans, there are some great bean pastas out there. The Miracle Noodles, which I know you're already familiar with. Yeah. But so my husband is one that he like feels like he still needs something on the plate. And like, you can have the meat and the vegetables. He's like, where's the rest of it? So we've been using the Hearts of Palm, and Hearts of Palm, and that's all it is. Now, if you're not a Hearts of Palm fan, this may not be the thing for you, but it is high fiber. You're getting a vegetable in the middle of it. It's a substituted as your pasta. And it's wonderful in marinaras and things like that. So yeah, we do the Hearts of Palm noodles. I get the variety of them, but mostly we use the thinner spaghetti, like the angel hair. Having said that, the other thing is that maybe you use something different. So I've got a recipe that is a lasagna where we're using layers with spinach. And I've got another one that you're actually layering. You're doing some layers with your marinara, your meat, and then you're doing like a meat layer, like a clean, but whatever source you want to use of either a salami or, and you layer, instead of having your noodles, you're going to layer a piece of that meat there. And then you're doing a little bit more of the marinara, and your
how does that work? Like what kind of meat? Like a salami or something?
You can do a salami. Like I've got a natural grocer close by, so I'll go and get one of their sandwich meats that's nitrite free and clean, but a larger one, and I'll do layers. Or you can do like a strip, little mix that has ricotta, little Parmesan. Do a layer with that, and you just kind of keep layering that with your marinara, your meat. Your ground meat, beef, whatever is beef, turkey you're using, and then you'll do another layer with your meat, and then you do your ricotta and your Parmesan and whatnot. And then you can also substitute that with your layers of spinach if you wanted to do that instead of the sandwich.
I'm going to try that one. That one's a good one.
Yeah.
You use the Hearts of Palm. You've tried the Pasta Zero, which is some kind of I think it's some kind of mushroom something.
It is, but I'm just going to warn you and anybody else that's listening out there, when you open the bag, it smells like dead fish. Yeah. And you could, I've had so many people, it's like, you got to warn people at first or else they're going to run away and go, holy, I'll never try this. Drain it, rinse it, and then put it in with whatever you're cooking, and it'll take on that taste. And it's just a very nice, fibrous noodle that gives your whatever you're cooking a little bit of substance, but it stinks to high heaven when you first open it.
So I'll tell you a quick story on this one. The exact same thing happened to me. So I don't like fishy fish. Mm-hmm. And I always like to pride myself on them. I'm not a picky eater, but I'm such a little baby about it. I think I am a picky eater. But my girlfriend and I were trying that pasta out for the first time. And that exact same thing. And I thought it had gone bad. I'm like, there's no way I'm eating that. So I basically then I read the container and it said, warning, this might smell a little, I think they use a euphemism. They said, well, it smells a little like the ocean or something like that. But anyway, yeah, it smells like fish when you first try it. And whatever it is, I rinse it out in a colander, mm-hmm. and it was fine. And the tooth feel much better, I thought, for me than the Hearts of Palm.
Yeah. Pasta
substitutes. So we've got the Hearts of Palm. We've got the Pasta Zero. Do you ever use spaghetti squash?
I do. Yeah. In fact, there's a recipe. Yes, I absolutely love spaghetti squash. It's lovely. You can take some spaghetti squash, cut it in half, scoop it out. Put a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of salt and pepper on it. Throw in some half a block, a little bit of either a cream cheese, or you could do a little feta, slice some cherry tomatoes, put it in the oven to bake with that in there. In fact, if you want to also grind some, fry up some hamburger meat or turkey, or if you want to add a little bit of that, or even just a clean nitrite-free pepperoni or something, you can put that on there too. Cook it with that inside, and you pull it out, and a little bit of marinara, and you pull it out, and you just then you take your fork through it, and you've got your spaghetti. You've got a little tomato, fresh tomato. You've got a little bit of marinara. You've got a little bit of meat if you've added that in there, and your cheese, and it's lovely.
I bet it is. So that's almost like pre-making the spaghetti.
Oh yeah.
Versus taking the squash by itself and then adding sauce later, which is what the
exactly. Yeah.
We've got our pasta covered.
I want to go back to one thing. The first part of digestion is in the mouth.
Yeah.
And we've gotten so used to eating quickly that a lot of times we really haven't fully chewed well enough. And so if you think about it, if you ever tried to count, you'll realize that you're doing 3 bites and then you're swallowing it. And so if we chew more, chew it till it's soup. It's hard to do. It's so hard to do, but chew until whatever it is almost soup in your mouth, and then swallow. So you've aided your digestion. You've probably broken down if the incidence for having gas or something. But anyway, so chew, and then also what goes along with that is that you will it takes a while for our mind to tell our stomach, or stomach to tell our mind that we're full.
Yeah.
And if we're wolfing things down, we'll tend to overeat. But if we're chewing fully before we're swallowing, it helps our digestion, and we're going to get full at the right time. We really don't want to be full.
It's hard, but you have to consciously do that. Am I chewing my food? At least for me. Tell me about now. This is the part I've been looking forward to as well too. Sweet tooths, right?
Okay.
Talk to me about your desserts. What are some of the tips and tricks and recipes and ways of cooking things, and how to make something taste yummy and delicious?
Well, first I would say some trial and error.
Yeah.
Because not everything tastes wonderful. And then also, again, it goes back to what you're using. So maple syrup is something I use a lot. I also, for a sweetener, I use banana frequently. And I can tolerate xylitol, and I don't use a lot of it in a recipe, but that is a sugar alcohol, but it's a no calorie one. So if you're trying to keep your calories low. And then I do throw in some Jerusalem artichoke, just because that's a probiotic. It's a fiber, and that can also help reduce like a sugar spike if you have some sugar in whatever the product is and whatever it is that you're making.
Right. So as far as the artificial sweeteners go, I try to stay away from pretty much any sugar, and I probably shouldn't eat like all of the Splendas and all that kind of stuff myself, but I still find it's easier to use a sugar substitute than it is to turn off my sweet tooth.
I do. So. Yeah. And I do. I feel like stevia, as long as it's not coming out from one of the companies that are doing, your aspartame, your sucralose, or your Splenda, your sweet and low, we really don't want those. NutraSweet is an exocytoxin. Your xylitol, some of the purists will say don't do erythritol or xylitol, but it really goes back to what you can tolerate if you're not doing a lot of it. But it can cause some gastro distress for some folks. And then if you're not a complete pure, if you can also do maple syrup, which has a little bit of sweetener in there for you.
What about stevia?
Stevia is fine. It's not the best as far as baking. It's great to sprinkle on top of something after you're done baking it. It can give it a nice flavor. The thing with baking is that you want to have something that is the equivalent to sugar in weight and volume.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it gets you'll have a lot of trial and error if you're trying to do that with stevia.
Okay.
So that's why I'll usually do. And there's a product too, it's Supreme Gold, that makes a brown sugar substitute that's either erythritol or xylitol, one of the sugar alcohols, and I'll bake with that as well.
Are there any brand names that are associated with that at all?
Yeah, Supreme Gold is the brand of the brown sugar substitute that I use.
Okay.
Lancanta does a xylitol. Most of the I'm trying to think like Source Natural. A lot of those places do a form of xylitol. Whole Foods has their version of a xylitol. Natural Grocer has Trader Joe's has a version of it. And And I just like that because it's the weight of sugar, and it's also, so 1 for 1, I can use that as
So
a
that's
replacement. It keeps it
the
easy.
dessert stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're coming out with a new book at some point in the future about all this. Hint, hint. Come on, Lisa. But would you be willing to post a couple just fun recipes that we talked some of the ideas?
Absolutely. I'll drop some in there that are like super easy, like really, really easy.
What?
So you asked earlier about diet, and I would say that I'm not a purist.
Yeah.
But I do strive to eat clean most times of the week. So my joke was that I eat like a Catholic schoolgirl, 6 days a week. So eat like an angel. And then on the 7th day, I make the devil blush. So just trying to say there's balance.
Okay.
80 to 90% of the time, I'm going to try to eat clean. But you know what? If I'm out and, there's some place that we're going to stop in, most restaurants aren't using a clean olive oil. It is what it is. Just enjoy it. And you go back to the things that are within your control.
All right, that wraps up our episode with Lisa Effren. Follow her for more fantastic information on health and fitness. On Instagram, she's Health Chick, HLTHCHIC at Instagram, as well as Facebook. Thanks for listening to the Rugged Human Podcast. Keep moving forward and smile.